Hi, and welcome to my weekly wrap up. I have some news. I got a bookshelf. It's not organized at all. Let me scoot over. It's not organized at all. There's so much that I need to still do, but it has three shelves. Let me see if I can show you. Yep. It has three shelves, and they are all already filled up. Just with all the books that I had crammed on like 1.5 shelves over there of this older bookshelf. So that is my exciting announcement. I did get some book mail. I got this book, The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub, I guess is how you say his name. I'm going to be reading this in August for my Dark Tower extended reading. And so I got it. And it's so pretty to me. Look at those colors. And the talisman words are the same as the colors in the sky. It's really pretty. And normally I don't care about how books look. Also, not to super copy Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative, but this book smells amazing. I don't usually smell used books because for some reason that feels creepier to me. But this book is new from Amazon and it smells amazing. Okay. Anyway, what other announcements? I don't think I have any. That's it. Oh, no. I am going on vacation. I am going with my mother on a girls' trip, just us, and we're going to Savannah, Georgia for a little while. And so my check-in next week is either not going to happen or it's going to be unedited, just taken on my telephone. So we'll see if I'm brave enough to do that without any edits. And that means I won't be able to flash up any books on the screen or anything like that. So we will see how it goes. So it just might be a little bit different next week. Okay, new subscribers, I want to say thank you. I'm going to scoot this way and put my books above my bookshelf and names and stuff. Okay, thank you to Patrick Ryan, Steve Talks About Books and Stuff, and Debbie Cluck. I am really thankful that you have subscribed and that you are here to talk books with me. Okay, let's talk about the books I finished. I finished 6 books this week. I had more graphic novels than I ever have, so let's get into it. For fantasy, I finished 2 fantasy books. This one is actually 2 short stories. It's called The Countess of Haberland and The Stagecoach. These are in a book together on Kindle Unlimited. It was self-published by Klaus from The Contradictorian. They both take place in his same fantasy world that he has created. It says on the little blurb that that's what he did during NaNoWriMo in 2020. And so they're just like little, like I said, they're pretty short stories that take place in a fantasy world he's created. And I asked him if he was writing more in that world. And he said yes, that he's actually working on a full-length book. Klaus is German, and so he's writing it in his first language, which is German. And so once he does that, then he translates it to English. And I think that's just really cool to know that, like to know how people, if English is not their first language, like how they go through the process of writing and what they do. So he's writing it in German and then he's going to translate it. And so anyway, these 2 books are kind of about assassins, but in kind of a different way. The first story is kind of a straightforward assassination with a little bit of a twist at the end. And the second one is quite a bit longer than the first one. And it's following a traveling group of people. I really liked that one. I just like any book that has a lot of characters in it. That excites me somehow if there's a lot more characters and a lot more things happening. And so I really liked the second one. And it was another one where you're reading it and you're like, wait, I think I get this. Like, I think this is referring to this other thing that we learned about in the first short story. And anyway, so I thought that they were really well done. And I am excited that he's writing this book. And hopefully I will get to read the big book when he's done with it. The second fantasy I read was a graphic novel called Monstrous, Volume 1 by Marjorie M. Liu. I spent the first half or maybe more of this without a clue what was happening. There were a lot of people that were introduced. There was a lot of time jumps back in time, back to the present. So I was kind of confused. There's also a character, and this could be on purpose, and maybe there's going to be a reveal later, but there's a character. Our main character is a girl. We find out at the beginning that she is missing an arm, and she's about to be sold as some kind of slave, and somebody comes in and they take her. And so that starts this whole, they don't take her by force. It's not like a fight or anything. It's just a person who's clearly more powerful walks in and says the queen, mother, whatever lady wants her. And the guy who was about to sell her was like, okay, here you go. No fight, no argument, just okay, fine. And so, you just learn there's different types of beings in this world. There's humans, there's arcana, and then there's cats are their own thing, and they're the thieves and the evil people of the of the world, which I think is hilarious. Cat lovers would probably be like, wait a minute, but I thought it was really funny. But the whole book is just about this girl trying to figure out who she is. She can remember a lot of things, but there are big gaps in her memory. The part that I said was most confusing. There's another character in the book who is drawn just like our main character. They look so much alike. And I would constantly be like, wait, the main character wasn't wearing that. That's not where she was. And I was like, oh, that's not her. But they look a lot alike. So now I'm like, is that somehow related to her? I don't know. I like, at the end, I was finally like, oh, I get this. But now we have to go on to volume 2. Which I am going to do, but if I'm still this confused when I finish volume 2, I'm probably just going to be done with it. But that was my fantasy for the week. For horror, I only finished one, and that was also a graphic novel called Chew. I wasn't really sure where to put this, but I did put it in horror because it has a ton of gore in it. This is about Tony Chew, who is a detective, a police detective. We meet him at the beginning of this book when he's on a stakeout with his partner because chicken is illegal in the world now, or in the United States, which means that they have established these speakeasies for chicken, where you can go and eat chicken. So anyway, they're on a stakeout because they think that this person is illegally buying chicken, and also they're pretty sure that he's committed 5 murders, but for some reason they seem to be more offended by the chicken thing than by the murders, but whatever. We quickly learn that Tony Chew can take a bite of anything and know everything about its history. So he can only eat beets because apparently that's the only food that doesn't work for him. So he can't do other things. But this book starts with him eating some soup at the chicken speakeasy. And the chef may have cut his finger while he was making the soup. And so we learn something else about Tony. And it's pretty disgusting. This book is at parts hilarious and completely absurd and then completely disgusting. And it's all wrapped into one. And I really liked it. Before I even finished volume 1, I went to my library website and I went ahead and put volumes 2 and 3 on hold, and they're ready to pick up. I'm actually going this afternoon, or tomorrow I'm going to pick them up. So I clearly enjoyed it. I really liked it because once something is discovered about Tony, then he actually is then recruited by the FDA to go to work for them. So it's really good. It was really good. There was betrayal and intrigue and horrible bosses and brother issues, so many things in this book in the background behind the whole who Tony Chew is and what he can do. So it was really good. Then to completely switch gears, I read The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963 by Christopher Paul Curtis. This was an historical fiction. It's also a middle grade, which I read occasionally read middle grade. Usually that has, I do that more for school, like when I'm teaching the kids, usually is when I get most of my middle grade. But I found Christopher Paul Curtis from reading one of our school books, which every time I talk about him, I have to plug this book. It's like the rule. I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's called Elijah of Buxton, and I still think it might be the best book I've ever read. There you go. So read it. It's historical fiction, and it's middle grade, and it still might be the best book I've ever read. Do I even like historical fiction? Not very much. But if Christopher Paul Curtis writes it, I will read it. So I read this book. It's a collection of stories told from the viewpoint of a 12-year-old boy. He is named Kenneth, and his parents live in Flint, Michigan. Well, he and his parents and his siblings, he's the middle child, live in Flint, Michigan, and his grandmother lives in Birmingham. That's where his mother's from. That's where she grew up, and I love it that he says when she gets mad, she starts talking real Southern. And that just cracks me up. So anyway, this book was so good, and it actually deals with some of the things that was going on in 1963 in Birmingham. They do go down to visit their grandmother, and they talk about like even how traveling in the 1960s for a black family, like how that had to be like strategically planned. Like you needed to know which rest stops were safe for you to stop at. Is there a place that you could stop and maybe spend the night? Like all these things needed to be determined ahead of time, and a lot of planning had to go into just traveling as a black family in the 1960s. And so getting that perspective on top of everything else that this book is about was so good. It was definitely my favorite book of the week. Then I read one romance called The Unsung Hero by Suzanne Bruckman. This actually came up as one of my new authors to start. This is a series from a group of Navy SEALs called the Troubleshooters. And so this book is actually like 3 different romances all wrapped up in one book. We have one flashback romance from World War II. Then we have one present romance between our main character, Tom, who is the Navy SEAL. He got a head wound and he had to go back home to rest for 30 days. They're like, you have to rest for 30 days. And so he decided to go to his uncle's house, who pretty much raised him. And when he gets there, the woman that he's always had a crush on is now back. She's a pediatrician. They have their little thing going on. And then my favorite part was actually Tom's niece, Mallory. She is 18 and trying to decide what to do with her life. She's really smart, but her mom like makes horrible choices. And so Mallory feels like she needs to do the opposite of what her mom does. And she's out walking one day, and this guy comes up to her and he's like, hey, I would like to draw you. And she's like, yeah, I'm not falling for that. But it turns out he really is an artist, and he has a graphic novel, and he thinks she would be the perfect like hero for his graphic novels. And so he talks her into it eventually. She's super safe about it, or at least I think she's safe about it. And she goes he just takes some pictures of her so that he has them later to sketch with. He's super above board. He seems to be really nice. He's really smart and hardworking. He has a really good, he has a job, and he has to get up really early in the morning and go to work. And then at the same time, he has to do the drawing and all the other stuff that he's doing. And so anyway, his name is David, and I liked David so much better than anybody else in the book. Mallory and David end up falling in love. It's super cute. And then the storyline over the whole thing is that Tom, who has come home to rest, is in the airport in Boston, and he thinks he sees a terrorist that he's been chasing for like 10 years. But then that terrorist is supposed to be dead, so then he thinks, well, maybe it's my head wound that's making me think it's him, because he clearly had reconstructive face work done. And so he's like, maybe it's not him. And so anyway, he gets his uncle and his uncle's best friend, who they were in the war together. That's the whole thing back in World War II, the whole storyline back there. And he gets them to help him. And at the same time, he then gets David to help him. So anyway, it seemed like all these different storylines and they ended up coming together. I think Suzanne Brockman does a really good job of writing the action scenes when she does, but the action scenes, we got a really good action scene at the front when Tom initially got his head wound, and then we get a really cool action scene at the end when all the groups are coming together. But in the middle, it's just like a standard romance, and I was kind of wanting something a little bit different, I guess. It was still okay, and I think I'm gonna try her next book, but I don't actually know if I am or not. I might not, so we'll see when it comes time for that. Then the last book that I read this week is just a fiction book. It's kind of like a speculative fiction book. I wanted to call it sci-fi at first, but that's only because it's in like a dystopian future. It's not really dystopian very much either, so I didn't know what to call it, and I just called it general fiction. But it's called Sanctuary by Paola Mendoza and Abby Sher. This is an imagining. So first of all, Paola is in real life an activist who started some of the marches that were done in protest of the families at the border, the Mexican border, and the separation and how all of that was going during the Trump administration. She kind of imagines, if you take yourself back to that place in time, okay, and then she imagines what is the worst possible thing that can come from that if things just get worse and worse and worse, specifically having to do with immigration. And so what we find in this book is a girl who, with her mom and her brother and her dad, had made it from Colombia and were living in California. And then her dad was taken. This is all pre like the bad stuff happening. But her dad was taken and deported back to Colombia. And now they're living in Vermont, her and her mom and her brother. And they have had to, well, her brother was born here in the States. But now what's happened is everybody gets a chip implanted in their wrist. And you have to scan that chip to do everything. You have to scan it to go buy groceries. You have to scan it to go to school. You have to scan it to get on a bus. Like everything, you have to scan your chip. And her brother was born in the States, and so he has a real chip. But she and her mom have a fake chip that they had to buy after chips became a thing because they were not registered. They were not American citizens. So anyway, now they're living in Vermont. And things start escalating, and California has decided that it wants to break away from the United States, and so the United States is going to be building a wall around California. There's so many themes in here that were hot button issues in 2019 that, I mean, this book feels like it was just taken directly out of the headlines of 2019 and just moved a few years later. And like I said, just thought about what is the progression that gets increasingly more dire. Like what would be the worst thing that would happen from this, and then the worst thing from this. And so that's just kind of what she did to get to 2032, I think, is where she set this book. And it's just a journey about the girl and her brother who have to end up leaving Vermont. And I'm not going to say all of what happens. There are quite a few traumatic events that happen in this. There's, of course, the separation of families. There's death of children. There is slavery mentioned in here. There is sexual assault implied. There's not any on the page, but there's just a lot of trauma and horrible things that happen. And so when I finished this book, I did have a sense of hope at the end. She is looking for sanctuary. That's why it's called Sanctuary. And so she is at the end, I feel like, in a place where she can see a future. And I hope that the writers of this felt the same way, because you can definitely tell that they felt pretty hopeless at this point when they started writing this book. And so I'm hoping that they saw a turnaround in the time since they started writing this, and that things for them have gotten better. I know that it's still not great for a lot of people, and there are still a ton of issues that need to happen. But I thought this book was okay. I liked it well enough, and that's everything that I read for this week. The books that I'm still reading. I'm having an issue with my Kindle books or my physical books because I don't have a lot of time right now, especially getting ready to go on vacation, to like sit down and read. So I only have 2 stories left in The Ones That Got Away by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm still reading that. And I'm still reading The Gamble by Catherine Jacques. This one I'm still really liking. It's just taking me a minute to get through it because I don't have time to sit down and read it. I will be finishing, and I'm also reading Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. This one is only like 75 pages, and I still don't know that I would recommend it to anybody yet. I am a little over halfway finished, and it's not good to me yet. Maybe it won't be. We'll see what I say about it when I finish it, because those 3 I will for sure finish in just a couple of days. Hopefully tonight I can sit down and get through at least 2 of those books, and then tomorrow I can finish another one. I just want to be done with all 3 before I go on vacation. And I'm listening to A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I think that people either love this book or they hate it, and I don't know, like halfway through it, maybe not even halfway through. And I find it to be fine. Like, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's fine. I do think that she uses the word baldric too much. Like, I get that there were a couple of booktubers who were making fun of the word baldric because she uses it all the time. And she really does. Like, I was like, I don't even know what that is, but apparently it's the thing that holds knives. So I'll have to go Google it, I guess. I don't know. But what I'm reading next, I'm going to be reading Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. This is my subscriber pick. So one of you put it in the comments of a video, and I put it on my wheel, and that's what I spun. So I'm going to be reading that. I'm going to be reading The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. This one I'm so scared of. I'm really, really, really wanting to get it on audio and make my mother listen to it in the car while we're on our vacation. But at the same time, we're going to Savannah, which is supposed to be a super haunted place, so I don't know that I want to do that. The next book that I want to read is The Wolf by Leo Carew. That is the Shelf Space Book of the Month pick. And then Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer, which is the Shelf Published Book of the Month on Discord. So those are the next 4 books that I will be reading, and I will definitely be able to get through a few of those and probably a few more on audio with my mother while we're on vacation. So that's it. That's my week. That's how it went. I thought it went really well. Like I said, I'm not reading as much as I was before. I need to maybe step it up. I don't know. I kind of am satisfied with it. I do wish I had more time to sit down and read some of my Kindle books or my physical books more than I do, but I'm about to go on vacation, so I should be able to get everything caught up. I have 10 books, I think, left on my TBR for the month of July. And right now, today, I'm filming this early. So it's July 20th. So I have 10 books and I have 11 days. So hopefully I can get it all done. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.